Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about creating a teaching portfolio. Now this is part of my portfolio writing series of videos. This one is specifically targeted for instructors because the kinds of stuff that we put into a teaching portfolio is related in many ways, but slightly different from the kinds of things that your students will be putting into their writing portfolios. So first off, it's important to be aware that there are two orientations for a teaching portfolio. There's an internal and an external portfolio. The internal portfolio is something you would keep for yourself, and it's a way of documenting for yourself and reflecting on how you have grown as a teacher, what you have learned, what sorts of challenges you've overcome, etc., etc. Basically, it's a way of charting your learning as an instructor. What have I done over time that has helped me become more proficient at the job that I do? Then there's external portfolios. People on the job market, like me. It's not... A lot of jobs don't ask for teaching portfolios, but it's not super uncommon that a job will request a teaching portfolio. You probably also will need a teaching portfolio if you are applying for promotion or tenure or something like that. If you're a grad student, you may need, if you're a grad student, a GTA, graduate teaching assistant, something like this, you may need to present a teaching portfolio if you're in a training course, or if that's part of your requirements for graduation or something like this. So these are external purposes. The internally oriented teaching portfolio is one that you keep for yourself to reflect for yourself and help yourself grow. The external one is one you present to someone else to tell them about your teaching practice and maybe about how you've grown as a teacher as well. So you want to be aware of who the audience for your intended portfolio is, because that's going to change what stuff you choose to include and what your purpose is, right? Because if your purpose is to reflect for yourself, then the reflective component may be more significant. You may have stuff that to an external reviewer wouldn't seem that significant, but to you is important. So that's the kind of thing. The selection of what gets included in your portfolio will really depend on what the purpose is and who's going to be reading it. So, what kind of stuff do you generally put into a teaching portfolio? Well, again, it depends to a certain extent on what you're doing with it. But Nadra Reynolds and Rich Rice in Portfolio Teaching give us a list of the kinds of things that might be included. Actually, I'm going to read they've got a list here. I've covered most of the stuff, or variations of most of the potential purposes, but they've got a list of purposes here, and I'm going to read those to you very quickly. So to prepare for a job change or promotion, to use as a source of teaching ideas and materials, to provide a model for students, teachers in training, or interested colleagues, in parentheses it says the practice what we preach reason, to practice reflective learning, to leave a record of your career, to keep track of changes you've made or risks you've taken, to remind you of the hours, days, weeks, months, and years you've devoted to teaching, or to reminisce about past classes, students, and moments. So, again, a lot of different potential reasons, and those are going to shape what gets included here. But Reynolds and Rice also give us a good list of some of the things that you may want to include within your portfolio itself. This, by the way, if you are looking on in this book, I don't know if anybody is going to be doing that, but this is pages 18 to 19, you get this list. So some of the things that you may include: a list of courses you've taught, a set of materials for a particular course that you teach often. A block of particular things, probably like a syllabus, maybe some course assignment sheets, possibly even some student samples with your feedback, maybe in-class activities if you've got a write-up of those, possibly reflection on how that course went, things like that. So a packet of information from a course you often teach. A packet of information from a course you've only taught once. Your CV, a teaching philosophy, some materials from a professional presentation about teaching, whether that's a conference presentation, whether that's work you did for a training course, whatever it is. A course plan or outline or even syllabus from the first class that you ever taught, along with the course plan, syllabus, outline for the most recent plan you've taught, and a reflection on how your process has developed over time. A set of your favorite or most successful assignments, stories or scenes that are important to you and that reflect on your experience of teaching, journals, notes, or emails that reflect your experience of teaching, selections from writings that you've done in classes with your students as a teacher, not like when you were a grad student or undergrad or something like that necessarily. Written responses to your students' writing. I do want to put a caveat on that. Generally speaking, if you are going to use your students' writing in a teaching portfolio, take their name off it and get written signed permission from them to do that. It's generally probably not going to be a legal problem one way or the other, but you want to make sure you have covered your bases. So every semester, at the end of the semester, I print out a permission slip for each of my students. They don't have to sign it if they don't want to, but that permission slip basically gives me permission, if I choose to use their work without their name on it for samples in future classes or a teaching portfolio, things like that. I would definitely do that before you include any student work in a teaching portfolio. Strategies you rely on in conferences. So sort of a brief description of this. A list of your favorite books and articles about teaching. Letters of recommendation you've written for students. Again, I would take their name off of it. Letters acknowledging your participation in an event, or letters of recommendation that you have from supervisors, colleagues, whatever it is, provided those are not confidential. Letters of recommendation, obviously. So that's a wide range of different kinds of things that you can incorporate. And as always, you want to be, this is a rhetorical exercise. Your teaching portfolio is rhetoric, so you want to be thinking about, who is my audience? What is my purpose? You know, the basic stuff. And that's going to help you determine what information goes into the teaching portfolio. And my teaching portfolio, so I'm on the job market. So my teaching portfolio, since I actually make up more than one, my teaching portfolios are externally oriented. They are primarily intended for people on hiring committees. What I tend to include, so I start generally with a table of contents that lists everything that's in the teaching portfolio. And for me, the teaching portfolio tends to run about 45 pages or so, depending on exactly what I include. So be aware that these may be quite long. So the table of contents. I include my teaching philosophy as the first page of the actual content. I include selected course materials, selected course evaluations. At WVU, when I taught there, West Virginia University, they gave us like 30-page long sets of evals, 40-page long sets of evals. I don't include the whole things. We got a statistical summary at the beginning that was like 3 pages long. So I tend to just include that, but I also put a note. I start that section with a brief description of here are what these courses are that you're getting the evals from. and I put a note on there, I'm including statistical summaries. The full set of evals with written comments is available upon request. So I include typically about 4 sets of course evals. For literature job applications, I tend to include 2 to 3 sets of evaluations for literature courses I've taught. But then, because it's been a while since I've taught lit courses, I include some of my most recent course evaluations from composition courses. If it's a more balanced job where it's going to be teaching lit and comp, I include typically 2 lit and 2 comp. But whatever it is for you, whatever makes the most sense for you in terms of the course evals that you have. And obviously select your strongest ones. So that's it. We got table of contents, teaching philosophy, selected course evaluations, starting with a sub-table of contents for what information is included in there. And then I include sample course materials, typically for 3 courses. So the first thing, I include 4 things for each course, but that's arbitrary. You can do this differently if you prefer. I start with the syllabus for that course, and that includes the schedule. My syllabi include the schedule. Obviously, you don't have to do that. If your syllabus is just the course policies and information, totally fine. I would still think about including a schedule maybe, but it's up to you. Then I include typically 1 major essay assignment. And that just sort of gives the reader a sense of what kinds of projects you're expecting them to do. Then maybe a smaller assignment. Maybe, if I can, maybe something a little bit unique to that course. So, like for my English, for my Brit Lit 1 class, early British literature class, I include a theater performance assignment sheet. For a Brit Lit 2 class that I taught online, I include a quiz because it was part of the assessment was quiz-based. So it's something that's more unique to that class, but reflects on the way that I approach teaching. And then a third, typically project assignment, but sometimes something else. So it might be like lecture notes, if I have lecture notes. But it could also be a third assignment sheet that's particularly representative of the way I approach that class, or the types of skills that I want students to develop. And so the idea here is, and for each of those courses, the three courses that I include that packet of materials, I'm choosing different assignments for each. So even if I've taught the same assignment in multiple classes, I'm not going to duplicate that material within the teaching portfolio because you don't get much mileage out of that. So I'm giving my readers different assignments to reflect the range of approaches that I take to teaching. The thing that is not necessarily super strong about my teaching portfolio is the reflective component. Yes, my teaching philosophy is in there, and that is a reflective document in the sense that I reflect on my teaching practice and the way that I approach things, but I don't have bits and pieces in there where I'm like, here's how this assignment went. Here were the things that were really successful. Here's maybe what I would do differently. So that element of portfolios because portfolios, one of the great things about them is that they are learning tools. They can help you reflect on what worked and didn't work, and what you might want to do better, etc., etc. And so that's something that I don't really have that much of in my teaching portfolio. And so that's something I'm considering incorporating in to really sort of strengthen that idea of not just is this a record of what I have done, it's also a record of how I'm thinking about moving forward. And that's a really good thing to incorporate both into internally oriented teaching portfolios so that you have those sort of notes of here's what I want to do in the future, here's how I can get better, but also for externally oriented teaching portfolios because it shows your reader that not only have you done things, but that you've thought about the implications of those things that you've done and how you could move forward and do a better job in the future. Because again, if it's for a job application, they want to know that you are trying to improve as an instructor before they hire you. If it's for promotion or tenure, they want to know that you are still moving forward, etc., etc. So that's always going to be a good approach to take.